Sorry, go back to your parents. I don't know if I missed it, but why the UK? Why England?
Because my mum, she answered the ad. She answered there were ads for Canada, Australia, and the UK. She was looking to to move to go abroad. She wanted to study as a nurse. She wanted to be a nurse, so she was going to do it in the Philippines. But at the time, there were all these offers coming in
Mm.
for nursing in Canada, to train as a nurse in Canada, to train as a nurse in Australia, to train as a nurse in the UK. And she could have easily, she would have chosen any one of those. She said it wasn't like, oh, she had to come to the UK. It just so happened that the UK application one came up before everyone else's, so she took it. She just went
I
with
guess it was meant to be.
meant to be. She just took the first one that came up. She wasn't. She
So
was ready to go.
was it just her, or like a
was
group
a
of
group.
Just
her and her
her.
friends?
No, it's just her.
Oh, it was just her.
She made friends, her friends, when she came to
Oh
the
yeah,
UK.
yeah, that's what you mean.
She never came with a group of friends from the Philippines. No, she was on her own. My mum was.
But they did
completely
create a
independent.
community of
But they
Filipinos
did.
who were here.
Yeah. Once they were.
Yeah, once they got here.
So she traveled with some Filipinos, and then that same Filipino group she stayed with as soon as they arrived, and they became lifelong friends. They've been lifelong friends ever since.
Mm-hmm.
Are they Igorot as well, or just?
No, they're not actually. They're non-Igorots. There were a few Igorots that then she met once she was here, in the nursing school, when she specialized actually as a mental health nurse. They were
Which school
Igorot.
did you go to then?
It was through
A hospital?
not a hospital. So it was
Mm.
Cane Hill Hospital Mental. It was Cane Hill Hospital, which had a mental health department.
Mhm.
And then she went from there to Claybury, the mental health hospital. It was a massive hospital.
Wow.
But yeah, she came through Cane Hill Hospital. It's not. I don't think it's there anymore. I think it's been absolved. But it was in South London. She arrived into South London.
Are there still opportunities like that for Filipino nurses in the UK? I'm just curious because
Yes.
I mean,
So not particularly trained. Like they're taking nurses that are already trained now. So my cousin has just literally arrived the other day. She's a trained nurse in the Philippines that they've just taken a whole bunch of nurses, but they're taking all the best nurses now. They don't need the trainee nurses anymore.
Yeah.
They're taking the best of the Philippines and shipping them over here to the UK to work as nurses here. So it's still happening. And once they're here as nurses, then they can move up. They're given opportunities to train up to,
Yeah, they usually come with a
specialize
contract and they do like, I don't know, a year or two, something like that in one
with
hospital.
one hospital, and then
they can move anywhere they want.
Yeah.
So they
And because there's
recognize.
Sorry.
They recognize the education like outright.
Oh yeah. Wow. Now it's completely different. I mean,
It'd be different if you came in if you're
They
coming to be
completely-
a doctor though.
no, even I think. So Raymond's a good friend of ours who's lodging with us at the moment. He's a master's student in political science in the Philippines. He's now doing, he was a bachelor's there, and then he's now doing his master's here in the University of London, SOAS. They recognize his.
They do.
They recognize.
Interesting.
Wow.
They recognize,
Times are a changing, people.
Times are changing.
Yeah, actually.
They recognize
Yeah.
the education of the.
But in
of
the old
schools.
days, they wouldn't have.
Oh no.
I mean, even in some areas in the States, I don't think it's every state, but a lot of folks who are doctors in the Philippines, they just become nurses because it's just an easier pathway. Because if you come in and try to come in as a doctor, you have to go through a bunch of training again. That's like, why am I going backwards and then having to do like rounds again? You know what I mean? And so most of them just forget it. I'll just do the because they have like nursing courses, quick short courses for doctors to become nurses, so they can go to other areas like Canada and the States.
Well, especially California. California has
Especially
really
California,
high, stringent kind of standards.
Wendy's auntie, her dad's sister, did that exact thing, and
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And the daughters did the same thing too. She's the doctor, and did the same thing, and she became a doctor. But then to come to America, became a nurse.
Became a nurse, yeah.
So
it's weird.
It's just an easier pathway.
Right.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that in the UK that they're opening. Being more open to the education in the Philippines.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, the education.
Well, they've recognized all of those nurses. They recognize all their qualifications.
So it only makes sense to recognize the doctors then.
I don't know. Next.
We'll
Maybe
see.
next. We'll
You might
see.
want to Google that a little bit more to find out what's
Yeah,
going on.
even here it's changing a bit, and yearly it's changing. So I'm really not up to date, but it's definitely a little bit easier. And they recognize, I don't know if completely outright, but more of your education, and then you go through some what do you call it? They assess your skills as well. So depending on that, you either have to take a little bit more, you have to retake the whole thing, or sometimes you can just challenge. Again, I've heard you can just challenge the exam and then that's it.
Wow.
In terms of like lawyers, actually, Audrey's cousin, yeah, he was able to successfully. I don't know the full story, but I think he was able to challenge the bar here, and now he lives in like Toronto and working as a lawyer. So
That's
man.
amazing.
Different times, right? Different
Wow,
times.
it's amazing.
Man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now you know
Yeah.
people can assess.
That's great though.
And,
It's good.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
even my
also
cousin.
like speaks to the shortage of like the talent pool on in these areas because if I was just reading just a bunch of stuff that came out maybe about 2 to 3 years ago, just the doctor shortage that will happen within the next like 10 years.
What?
Because
we're already short.
people-
I don't know.
Yeah,
We've been short too. We're short.
Well,
Everyone.
just because people are discouraged, one, because it costs a ghastly amount of money. Like, you know, why would you want to do that and still owe like, you know, $300,000 and then have to deal with like someone suing you for malpractice?
Yeah.
So it, you know, but especially the debt, the student loan debt is just not attractive to a lot of people. So you get someone from another country who doesn't have that student loan debt because their country paid for that. That's or someone paid for it, but
somebody
it didn't cost like the same like that. You're getting someone who definitely has a competency, you know, to do the job well. And in fact, if they get chosen over here, likely they're gonna do it super well because you know they got to prove themselves. So there's always that talk about like you want to. It was always good to get like a Filipino, especially a Filipino doctor because you know that they're probably the best of the best to even make it here in America. You know, and they're probably usually the top student of something
of the whole in the Philippines,
of the whole thing over there, and so
I was gonna say like my cousin back in the 90s when he moved to New York, he was already a doctor in the Philippines, but he had to downgrade. He became a nurse and whatnot, and since that time he has been trying to get back to like a doctor status or whatever. He's back in the Philippines now being a doctor, but that's because he had to get deported. But there's that thing where when you come from the Philippines or whatever, and you basically they don't really recognize your profession. But even for like engineers,
engineers too,
that's right. You know, like Filipino engineers, like especially in the 60s in America, I know in America they were pulled. A lot of Filipino engineers were pulled over in the late 60s, and then like all of a sudden they slowed it down in the 70s, late 70s and 80s, and I don't know why, but
maybe because they had engineers already in the host country. Maybe they already had them.
Or all the engineers Saudi.
I think the philosophy was because there was a shortage. They didn't want to just rely on foreign professionals, and so
once they had enough.
Up to 10 years ago, I think like they still favored like native borns who were engineers rather than those
from abroad.
Like from abroad that have more than 5 years. So even though my dad was like an engineer for like a long time, like a lot of new engineers that just graduated, they would still be favored technically. They'd still require them to have at least 5 years of experience. But if they have 5 years of experience versus my dad, they would probably choose the younger engineer because my dad had to like do it over again. He had to
he had to go back and do everything. But he must have gotten like the best grades because it was too easy for him.
He's old, right? So he knows everything now.
Yes. Yeah.